In a world torn by the clamor of war, where the air is thick with the smoke of conflict, and the cries of the displaced echo through shattered streets, there is a moment, a fleeting, fragile moment, where a single act of kindness can pierce the darkness like a star in the midnight sky. Picture a small village, its name lost to the headlines, nestled in a valley scarred by years of fighting. The cobblestone streets, once alive with the laughter of children and the chatter of neighbors, are now silent, save for the distant rumble of artillery. Amid the rubble of a bombed-out school, a young woman named Amira kneels beside a child no older than 6, his face streaked with dirt and fear. She offers him a piece of bread from her own meager rations, her hands trembling not from hunger, but from the weight of hope she carries. In that moment, as the boy's eyes meet hers, something shifts. The chaos of the world fades, and a quiet truth emerges. Love, even in its smallest forms, can endure where hatred seeks to destroy. This is not a scene from a distant past, but a reality unfolding in countless corners of our world today. War, with its relentless hunger for power and division, casts a long shadow over humanity. It fractures families, uproots communities, and sows seeds of despair that threaten to choke out hope. Yet in the midst of this darkness, the teachings of Christ and the wisdom of Pope Francis call us to a different path, a path of compassion, forgiveness, and relentless hope. Their words are not abstract ideals, but living truths meant to guide us through the storms of modern life, from the battlefields of nations to the quieter wars we wage within ourselves. Let us begin with a teaching from Christ, one that resonates with the raw simplicity of Amira's act. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. These words, spoken on a hillside to a crowd weary of oppression, are not a call to passive avoidance of conflict, but an invitation to actively build peace in a world that thrives on division. Pope Francis echoes this in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, where he writes, "We are called to love everyone without exception. Yet to love an enemy requires a heart capable of embracing the pain of the other." In a time when war dominates headlines, whether in Ukraine, the Middle East, or forgotten conflicts in Africa, this teaching feels both daunting and urgent. How do we become peacemakers in a world that seems to reward vengeance? How do we love when hate feels justified? The answer lies not in grand gestures, but in the small, deliberate choices we make each day. Consider Amira's story again. She is no diplomat, no soldier, no figure of power. She is a teacher, her classroom reduced to ruins, her students scattered by war. Yet in offering bread to a frightened child, she becomes a peacemaker. Her act does not stop the bombs or rewrite treaties, but it restores a flicker of humanity in a place where it has been nearly extinguished. This is where Christ's call begins, not in the halls of power, but in the dust and debris of ordinary moments. To live as a peacemaker, we must first confront the wars within ourselves. Stress, disconnection, and anger are battles we all face, amplified by the relentless pace of modern life. The constant buzz of notifications, the pressure to succeed, the temptation to lash out at those who wrong us, these are the skirmishes that erode our capacity for peace. Pope Francis reminds us in Gaudete et Exsultate that holiness is found in small gestures of love even amid life's chaos. He writes, "We are all called to be saints, not by doing extraordinary things, but by filling our daily lives with love. This is the first practical step to pause to breathe and to choose love over hate in the moments that test us. Imagine a Father Michael sitting in a cramped apartment in a city far from the war-torn village. His days are a blur of long hours at a warehouse job mounting bills and the strain of raising two teenagers in a world that feels increasingly hostile. One evening, his daughter storms out of the room after an argument over screen time, slamming the door behind her. Michael's instinct is to shout to demand respect to win the battle. But instead he closes his eyes and recalls a homily he heard at church, where the priest quoted Pope Francis, "A family that never argues is a dead family. A family that knows how to forgive is a living one." Michael takes a deep breath, walks to his daughter's room, and knocks gently. "I'm sorry I raised my voice," he says. "Can we talk?" In that moment, he is a peacemaker, not because he has solved every problem, but because he has chosen to build a bridge instead of a wall. This choice is not easy. It requires humility, patience, and a willingness to let go of pride. Christ's command to love our enemies, whether they are strangers, co-workers, or even family members, demands that we see them not as threats, but as bearers of the same divine spark we carry. Pope Francis, in his 2016 address to refugees in Lesbos, said, "Each person is a story, not a number. Each carries a dignity that no war can erase." To apply this in daily life, we can start by listening. Truly listening not to respond, but to understand, can diffuse conflict before it escalates. When a coworker snaps at you during a stressful project pause, and consider what pressures they might be facing. When a friend's political views clash with yours, resist the urge to argue and instead ask, "What led you to feel this way?" These are not signs of weakness, but of strength, rooted in the belief that every person is worth understanding. Let us return to Amira's village for a moment. The war has not spared her family. Her brother was conscripted into the fighting, and her parents fled to a neighboring country, leaving her to care for her elderly grandmother. Each day she walks past checkpoints, her heart pounding to scavenge for food. The soldiers at the checkpoint are young, barely older than her students, their faces hardened by fear and propaganda. They shout orders, their rifles slung low, and Amira feels the weight of their suspicion. It would be easy to hate them, to see them as the enemy. But she remembers a story from the Gospel, one her grandmother used to tell her, the parable of the Good Samaritan. A man beaten and left for dead is helped not by his own people, but by a stranger, an enemy who chooses compassion over prejudice. Inspired by this, Amira begins to carry extra bread, offering a piece to the soldiers when she passes. At first, they eye her warily, suspecting a trick. But over time, one of them, a boy named Tariq, begins to nod in thanks. A small crack forms in the wall between them. This is peacemaking in action, not erasing conflict, but planting seeds of humanity that might one day grow. How can we plant such seeds in our own lives? One practical step is to practice gratitude even in the midst of struggle. Pope Francis often speaks of the spirituality of gratitude, which shifts our focus from what divides us to what unites us. Each morning, take a moment to write down 3 things you are thankful for: a warm cup of coffee, a kind word from a friend, the chance to try again after a mistake. This practice grounds us, reminding us that even in a world of war and stress, goodness persists. Another step is to seek out opportunities for small acts of kindness, like Amira's bread or Michael's apology. Pay for a stranger's coffee, hold the door for someone, or send a note to a friend you've lost touch with. These acts ripple outward, creating a chain of goodwill that can soften even the hardest hearts. The teachings of Christ and Pope Francis also challenge us to look beyond our immediate circles. War, poverty, and injustice are not distant problems, but shared human burdens. In Laudato Si, Pope Francis calls us to care for our common home, urging us to see the connection between environmental destruction, conflict, and human suffering. Consider the refugee crisis fueled by wars and climate change. Millions like Amira's parents are displaced seeking safety in a world that often greets them with suspicion. As peacemakers, we can advocate for them not with loud protests, but with quiet, persistent action. Volunteer at a local shelter, donate to organizations aiding refugees, or simply educate yourself about their stories. These efforts, though small, align with Christ's command to welcome the stranger, Matthew 25:35. As we reflect on Amira's courage and Michael's humility, we see that peacemaking is not a one-time act, but a way of life. It is a commitment to choose hope over hate, even when the world tempts us to despair. Christ's words. Peace. I leave with you. My peace I give you. John 14:27 are not a promise of a world without conflict, but a gift of inner strength to face it. Pope Francis, in his 2020 World Day of Peace message, said, "Hope is the virtue that inspires us to keep moving forward even when obstacles seem insurmountable." This hope is what sustains Amira as she shares her bread, what guides Michael as he rebuilds trust with his daughter, and what calls each of us to be a light in the darkness. Let us carry this hope into our daily lives, trusting that every act of love, no matter how small, is a step toward peace. In a world that often feels like a battlefield, we are not powerless. We are children of God, called to build a kingdom of compassion, one moment at a time. As the sun sets over Amira's village, casting a golden glow on the ruins, she stands and offers a silent prayer, not for the war to end, but for the strength to keep loving through it. Her prayer is ours, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, hope can rise like a star guiding us home. The story does not end here, for hope is not a destination, but a journey. In the days that follow, Amira's small acts of kindness begin to ripple through the village. The soldier Tariq shares the bread with his comrades, sparking quiet conversations about home and family. Across the ocean, Michael's daughter begins to open up their arguments, giving way to understanding. These threads of hope weave together, crossing borders and binding hearts, proving that even in a world at war, love can build bridges where hate has burned them down. The path of the peacemaker is not easy, but it is holy, and it begins with a single step, yours. The village where Amira kneels among the ruins is not the only place where hope fights to take root. Thousands of miles away, in a bustling city where skyscrapers cast long shadows over crowded streets, another story unfolds. Here the war is not fought with bombs, but with words, not with rifles, but with indifference. It is a war of disconnection, where people hurry past one another, eyes glued to screens, hearts walled off by the grind of daily life. In this urban jungle, a man named Daniel stands at a crosswalk, his briefcase heavy with papers, and his mind heavier with doubt. He is a lawyer, successful by the world's standards, yet plagued by a gnawing emptiness. The news on his phone screams of distant conflicts. Amira's village among them, but to Daniel they feel like stories from another planet. His battles are closer deadlines, a strained marriage, and a son who barely speaks to him. Yet, as he waits for the light to change, a street musician's melody cuts through the city's noise, a simple hymn that stirs something long buried in Daniel's heart. It is a moment of grace, a whisper of the divine reminding him that even in a world of chaos, there is a call to reconnect with others, with God, with himself. This call echoes the teachings of Christ and Pope Francis, who both speak to the human heart's longing for connection in a fragmented world. Christ's command to love your neighbor as yourself, Mark 12:31, is not a vague sentiment, but a radical challenge to see every person, stranger, friend, or enemy, as a reflection of God's image. Pope Francis, in his apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia, writes, "Love opens our eyes and enables us to see beyond all else the great worth of a human being." In a society where technology promises connection but often breeds isolation, this teaching is a lifeline. The stress of modern life, the conflicts that erupt in families, workplaces, and communities, and the temptation to retreat into self-preservation, all these are barriers to love. But they are not insurmountable. Like Amira's bread shared in the rubble, Daniel's fleeting moment with the street musician is a spark, an invitation to step out of isolation and into communion. Daniel's life is a microcosm of the disconnection that plagues so many. His days are a blur of courtrooms and conference calls, his evenings spent scrolling through emails or arguing with his wife Sarah over trivialities. Their son Ethan is a quiet 15-year-old who spends hours in his room lost in video games or social media. The family eats dinner in silence, each absorbed in their own world. Daniel feels the weight of this distance, but doesn't know how to bridge it. He remembers his childhood when his mother would read him the story of the prodigal son, a father who welcomed his wayward child with open arms, no questions asked. That story rooted in Christ's parable. Luke 15:11-32 feels distant now, like a fairy tale. Yet the musician's hymn, a faint echo of amazing grace, lingers in his mind, nudging him toward a truth. Love begins with presence, with showing up, even when it's messy. Pope Francis often speaks of the culture of encounter, a way of living that prioritizes relationships over efficiency. In his 2015 address to the U.S. Congress, he urged, "Let us seek for others the same possibilities which we seek for ourselves. Let us help others to grow as we would like to be helped ourselves." For Daniel, this means stepping out of his routine to truly see his family not as problems to be fixed, but as people to be loved. The first practical step is simple yet profound presence. He decides to try something new. That evening, instead of retreating to his study, he knocks on Ethan's door. "Hey, want to play a game?" he asks, holding up a deck of cards. Ethan looks skeptical, but shrugs and joins him at the kitchen table. They play in near silence at first, but as the cards pile up, Ethan starts to talk about school, his friends, a game he's obsessed with. Daniel listens, not interrupting, not judging. It's a small victory, a crack in the wall between them. This act of presence is not just for families. It applies to the coworker who seems perpetually stressed, the neighbor who keeps to themselves, even the stranger on the street. Christ's parable of the Good Samaritan, which inspired Amira's kindness to the soldiers, also speaks to Daniel's city. The Samaritan didn't just help the injured man. He stopped. He saw, he acted. In a world that rushes past, suffering stopping is revolutionary. Consider a moment from Daniel's commute the next day. At the subway station, he notices an elderly woman struggling with her bags. His instinct is to keep moving. He's late for a meeting, but the memory of the hymn and his evening with Ethan pulls him back. He offers to carry her bags to the platform. She smiles, her eyes crinkling with gratitude, and tells him about her grandson, who's about Ethan's age. It's a brief exchange, but it leaves Daniel lighter, as if he's rediscovered a part of himself. To live out Christ's command to love our neighbor, we must also confront the barriers within us. Stress for Daniel is a constant companion fueled by the pressure to perform and the fear of failure. Pope Francis, in Gaudete et Exsultate, reminds us that we need silence and prayer to hear God's voice amid the noise. Daniel begins to carve out moments for reflection, starting with 5 minutes each morning. He sits by his window, coffee in hand, and prays not with formal words, but with honesty. God, I'm tired. Show me how to love better. This practice, rooted in the Christian tradition of contemplative prayer, grounds him, helping him approach his day with intention rather than reaction. It's a step anyone can take. Find a quiet moment. Breathe and ask for guidance. It doesn't erase stress, but it reframes it, making space for grace. Back in Amira's village, the ripples of her kindness continue to spread. Tariq, the soldier who accepted her bread, begins to question the propaganda he's been fed. One night, under a sky lit by distant explosions, he slips a note to Amira at the checkpoint. Thank you. My sister is your age. I miss her. It's a risky gesture, one that could cost him his position, but it's also a step toward connection. Amira, moved by his words, writes back, sharing a memory of her brother who loved to draw. This exchange, fragile as a spider's web, is a testament to Pope Francis's vision in Fratelli Tutti. Every human person is an end in themselves, not a means to an end. Tariq and Amira, divided by war, are finding their shared humanity one note at a time. This vision of connection extends beyond personal relationships to the wider world. Christ's call to love our neighbor includes those we'll never meet, like the refugees fleeing Amira's war, or the workers who made Daniel's clothes in a distant factory. Pope Francis, in Laudato Si', challenges us to see the interconnectedness of all creation, urging us to act with justice and solidarity. For Daniel, this means rethinking his choices. He starts small, researching brands that prioritize ethical labor practices. It's not a complete overhaul, but it's a start. He also begins to volunteer at a local food bank inspired by a homily quoting Christ. Whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did for me. Matthew 25:40. There he meets people like Maria, a single mother who lost her job during a recession. Listening to her story, Daniel realizes that his legal skills could help. He offers pro bono advice, helping her navigate a housing dispute. It's not a grand gesture, but it's love in action, a bridge across the divide of circumstance. Connection also requires forgiveness, a theme central to both Christ's and Pope Francis's teachings. In the Lord's Prayer, Christ instructs us to pray, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." Matthew 6:12. Pope Francis, in his 2016 Jubilee of Mercy, said, Forgiveness is a force that resurrects a new life and gives courage to look to the future with hope. For Daniel, forgiveness is a hurdle. He and Sarah have grown distant, their arguments rooted in old wounds, his long hours, her unspoken resentments. One night, after a particularly tense exchange, Daniel recalls the prodigal son, how the father ran to his child without demanding apologies. Inspired, he writes Sarah a letter not to defend himself, but to acknowledge her pain. "I've been absent even when I'm here," he writes. "I want to do better." Sarah doesn't respond immediately, but the next morning she leaves a note on the fridge. "Let's talk tonight." It's a fragile step, but it's enough. Forgiveness is not just personal, it's communal. In Amira's village, the war has left deep scars. Families torn apart, trust shattered. Yet a small group of women, including Amira, begins to gather in the ruins of the church praying for peace. They invite others, even those from rival factions, to join. At first, the meetings are tense words, sharp with blame. But over time, stories emerge: mothers who lost sons, wives who lost husbands. Tears replace accusations, and a shared grief binds them. This is forgiveness in its rawest form, not erasing pain, but choosing to build something new despite it. Pope Francis, in his 2021 visit to Iraq, spoke of this. Forgiveness is necessary to remain in love, to rebuild where destruction has prevailed. These women, like Daniel and Sarah, are living proof that forgiveness is not weakness, but courage. As Daniel and Amira's stories intertwine, we see that connection is not a luxury, but a necessity. It is the antidote to the disconnection that fuels war stress and division. Christ's command to love, amplified by Pope Francis's call for encounter, is a blueprint for healing. Practical steps: presence prayer, ethical choices. Forgiveness are not abstract, but achievable. They are the threads that weave a tapestry of hope, linking a lawyer in a city to a teacher in a war zone, a soldier to a stranger, a family to itself. Daniel's journey is far from over. As he steps into the food bank each week, he carries the hymn's melody in his heart, a reminder that grace is always near. Amira, too, continues her quiet mission, her notes to Tariq, a lifeline in the chaos. Their worlds, though distant, are bound by a shared truth. Love is the bridge that spans every divide. As the city lights flicker and the village stars shine, the call to love echoes, urging us all to stop, to see, to act. In a world that pulls us apart, we are invited to draw closer, to become neighbors, to choose hope over hate. One encounter at a time. The threads of hope that bind Amira's village and Daniel's city weave further, crossing oceans and touching lives in unexpected ways. In a small coastal town where the rhythm of waves masks the undercurrent of unrest, a woman named Clara stands at the edge of a pier, her hands gripping the railing as the wind tugs at her scarf. The town, once a haven for fishermen and artists, is now fractured by economic decline and rising tensions. Factories have shuttered, leaving families like Clara's struggling to make ends meet. Her husband, a mechanic, lost his job when the local plant closed and their savings are dwindling. Whispers of blame ripple through the community against immigrants, against politicians, against each other. Clara, a nurse at the understaffed clinic, sees the toll in her patients' eyes: fear, anger, despair. Yet as she gazes at the horizon, where the sea meets the sky, she recalls a phrase from her childhood catechism, drawn from Christ's words: Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Matthew 14:27. It's a quiet anchor in the storm, a reminder that faith can steady even the most turbulent waters. This promise of presence, central to Christ's teachings, is amplified by Pope Francis's call to trust in God's mercy amid life's trials. In his encyclical, Dives in Misericordia, Pope Francis writes, "Mercy is the bridge that connects God and humanity, opening our hearts to the hope of being loved forever despite our sinfulness. In a world where fear fuels conflict, whether in Amira's war-torn village, Daniel's disconnected city, or Clara's struggling town, this teaching is a beacon. Fear isolates it, accuses it, divides. But mercy rooted in faith invites us to trust, to heal, and to act with courage. For Clara, the challenge is to move beyond survival, to transform her fear into a force for good, not just for her family, but for her community where division threatens to unravel the bonds that once held it together. Clara's days are a marathon of long shifts at the clinic, hurried dinners and sleepless nights worrying about bills. Her husband Javier has grown quiet, his pride bruised by unemployment. Their daughter Sophia, a bright 12-year-old, senses the strain, but doesn't know how to help. The town's tensions spill into daily life arguments at the market, graffiti on shuttered storefronts, a growing distrust of outsiders. Clara, raised in a family that leaned on faith through hard times, feels the pull of despair, but resists it. She remembers a story from the Gospel when Jesus calmed the storm, Mark 4:35-41, urging his disciples to have faith even as the waves crashed. Pope Francis, in his 2020 Urbi et Orbi address during the pandemic, echoed this. Faith does not shield us from trials, but it gives us the strength to face them with hope. Clara decides to start small, to anchor her family in faith before reaching out to her town. Her first step is to revive a ritual from her own childhood, praying together. One evening after a tense dinner, she lights a candle and invites Javier and Sophia to join her. Just for a minute, she says, sensing their hesitation. She recites a simple prayer, one she learned from her grandmother. Lord, give us peace in our hearts, so we can share it with others. Javier shifts uncomfortably, but Sophia, curious, asks, "Does God really listen?" Clara smiles, admitting her own doubts. "I think so. But sometimes we have to listen back. It's not a perfect moment, but it's a start, a tiny seed of faith planted in their home." This practice, inspired by Pope Francis's emphasis on family prayer in Amoris Laetitia, becomes a daily anchor, a space where fears are named and hope is nurtured. Faith, however, demands action, not just words. Christ's call to feed my sheep, John 21:17, is a mandate to care for others, especially in times of need. Clara sees this need every day at the clinic, where patients arrive not just with ailments, but with stories of lost jobs, homes, dignity. One patient, an immigrant named Luis, comes in with a sprained wrist, but lingers to talk. He's been harassed at the docks, blamed for taking jobs that no longer exist. Clara listens, her heart heavy. She recalls Pope Francis's words in Fratelli Tutti. Every stranger who knocks at our door is an opportunity to meet Christ. Instead of rushing to her next patient, she takes a moment to connect Luis with a local priest who runs a job training program. It's a small gesture, but it gives Luis a spark of hope, a reminder that he's not alone. This act of mercy ripples outward. Clara begins to notice others in her town who are struggling not just with money, but with the weight of fear and anger. She thinks of the parable of the lost sheep, Luke 15:3-7, where Jesus seeks out the one who is lost, leaving the 99 behind. In her town, the lost are everywhere. The unemployed, the marginalized, the angry youth spray painting walls. Inspired Clara organizes a community meeting at the church, not to preach, but to listen. She invites everyone: locals, immigrants, young, old. The turnout is small, the room tense. A fisherman shouts about outsiders stealing our future. A young woman counters blaming the government. Clara, nervous but resolute, shares her own fears about her family, her job, the town's future. Her vulnerability shifts the room. Slowly, others open up their stories, weaving a fragile thread of understanding. It's not a solution, but it's a beginning, a step toward healing division. Back in Amira's village, a parallel story unfolds. The women's prayer group, born in the church ruins, has grown, drawing in mothers, sisters, even a few men. Their gatherings are no longer just about prayer, but about action. They pool their meager resources to distribute food sharing with families from rival factions. Amira, now a quiet leader, faces resistance. Some call her naive, others dangerous. Yet she persists, inspired by Christ's words. "Whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did for me." Matthew 25:40. One day, a woman from the other side arrives, her face gaunt, her son sick. The group hesitates, old wounds raw. Amira, remembering Tariq's note, steps forward, offering medicine from her own scarce supply. The woman weeps not just for the medicine, but for the mercy. This act, like Clara's meeting, is a spark, a testament to Pope Francis's vision in Laudato Si. We are one human family, called to care for each other and our common home. Clara's efforts in her town face their own challenges. Not everyone welcomes her outreach. At the clinic, a colleague warns her against stirring things up, and Javier, still grappling with his own fears, questions her time away from home. Clara feels the strain her faith tested. She turns to Scripture, finding solace in Christ's promise. "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. She begins to practice a form of examen, a reflective prayer. Pope Francis often recommends, where she reviews her day, noting moments of grace and struggle. One night, she writes in a journal, "Today I was impatient with Sophia, but Luis smiled when I helped him. God help me see you in both." This practice strengthens her not by erasing doubt, but by grounding her in God's presence. Mercy, as Clara learns, is not just about helping others, but about receiving it. When Javier finally opens up about his shame over losing his job, Clara listens, not fixing, just holding space. It's a moment of mutual vulnerability, echoing the prodigal son's embrace. Sophia, inspired by her mother's efforts, starts a project at school collecting stories from townsfolk about their hopes for the future. Her classmates, once divided by cliques, begin to collaborate, their creativity a balm for the town's wounds. These small acts, Clara's listening, Javier's honesty, Sophia's project, are the little gestures Pope Francis praises in Gaudete et Exultate, proof that faith paired with action can transform even the darkest moments. The call to mercy extends beyond the personal to the global. Clara, like Daniel, begins to see her town's struggles as part of a larger tapestry. The factory closures, the environmental damage from overfishing, the displacement of families like Luis's, all are linked to the wars and injustices that plague Amira's village. Pope Francis, in his 2021 World Day of Peace message, urged May we become artisans of peace, breaking down walls and fostering dialogue. Clara takes this to heart, advocating for sustainable practices at town meetings, supporting fair trade initiatives, and teaching Sophia about the dignity of every person, no matter their origin. These actions, though modest, align with Christ's vision of a kingdom where the last shall be first, Matthew 20:16. In Amira's village, the prayer group's work draws attention, not all of it welcome. Soldiers, including Tariq, are questioned by their superiors, and Amira faces threats for her outreach. Yet she finds strength in Christ's words. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Matthew 5:10. One night, as gunfire echoes in the distance, she writes a letter to her scattered family. Quoting Pope Francis, hope is bold. It looks beyond personal convenience to the needs of others. Her letter, smuggled across borders, reaches her parents who share it with other refugees, sparking a chain of courage. This is mercy's power. It multiplies, crossing divides, binding hearts. Clara's town, too, begins to change. The community meetings grow, drawing in skeptics and dreamers alike. A local artist paints a mural on a shuttered factory depicting hands clasped across a river, a symbol of unity. Luis finds work through the priest's program, his gratitude inspiring others to volunteer. Clara, exhausted but hopeful, sees these changes as answers to her prayers, proof that faith can move mountains, even if one stone at a time. She thinks of Christ's promise. I am with you always to the end of the age. Matthew 28:20. It's a promise that sustains Amira as she shares medicine, Daniel as he rebuilds his family, and Clara as she knits her town together. The stories of Clara, Amira, and Daniel are not isolated. They are part of a larger movement, a quiet revolution of mercy and faith. In every corner of the world, people are answering Christ's call to love, to trust, to act. Pope Francis, in his 2023 homily for Pentecost, said, "The Spirit does not leave us alone. It makes us a community of love." This community spans continents, linking a nurse on a pier, a teacher in a war zone, a lawyer in a city. Their actions, prayer, listening, sharing, advocating, are the building blocks of a world where hope triumphs over hate. As Clara walks home from the pier, the stars above mirror the lights of Amira's village and Daniel's city. The challenges remain war, disconnection, fear, but so does the promise of mercy. Each step Clara takes, each choice Amira makes, each moment Daniel shares is a testament to faith's power to heal. The world is not yet whole, but it is being mended, one act of love at a time. The call now passes to us, to trust in God's presence, to extend mercy, to build bridges where fear has burned them down. In this shared journey, we are never alone, for the one who calmed the storm walks, with us guiding us toward a dawn where hope shines unbroken. The light of hope flickering in Amira's village, Daniel's city, and Clara's coastal town finds new ground in a sprawling refugee camp on the edge of a desert. Here, where tents stretch like a patchwork quilt under a relentless sun, a young man named Yusuf navigates a life uprooted by war. His home, once a vibrant market town, lies in ruins. His family scattered, some lost to the conflict, others to distant borders. Yusuf, barely 20, carries the weight of survival in his calloused hands and the ache of loss in his heart. Yet in the camp's crowded lanes, where despair could easily take root, he finds purpose in the laughter of children playing with a makeshift soccer ball. Their joy, fragile but fierce, reminds him of a verse from the Gospel. His mother used to whisper, "Let the little children come to me, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." Mark 10:14. In their resilience, Yusuf sees a call to nurture, to protect, to build, a call that echoes the teachings of Christ, and Pope Francis urging us to find strength in service amid suffering. This call to serve, even in the face of personal pain, is at the heart of Christ's life and message. His washing of the disciples' feet, John 13:1-17, is not just a gesture of humility, but a radical redefinition of power to lead, is to serve, to love, is to give. Pope Francis, in his 2019 address to youth in Panama, said, "The love of Christ impels us to go out to meet others, to live for others, especially the most vulnerable." In a world where war and displacement, like those that drove Yusuf from his home, strip millions of dignity, this teaching is a lifeline. It challenges us to move beyond self-preservation, to see service as a path to healing, not just for others, but for ourselves. For Yusuf, the camp is both a prison and a proving ground, a place where despair and hope wrestle daily, and where his choices can shape the future. Yusuf's days begin before dawn, hauling water from a distant well to share with the elderly in his section of the camp. His nights are spent teaching children to read under the dim glow of a solar lantern, using books donated by aid workers. He is no saint. Grief and anger simmer beneath his calm exterior. He misses his sister, who vanished during their escape, and his father, killed in a bombing. The camp's harsh realities, food shortages, disease, the constant threat of violence, test his resolve. Yet he remembers his mother's faith, how she would quote Christ, "Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant." Matthew 20:26. Inspired. Yusuf chooses to serve not because it's noble, but because it keeps him human. Each bucket of water, each lesson taught, is a defiance of the war that tried to break him. This choice resonates with Pope Francis's vision in Evangelii Gaudium, where he writes, "We become fully human when we give ourselves to others." For Yusuf's, service is a practical step toward hope. He starts by organizing a soccer game for the children, using a cleared patch of dirt as a field. The kids, many orphaned or traumatized, light up as they chase the ball, their shouts drowning out the camp's hum of sorrow. Parents and elders gather to watch, some smiling for the first time in months. One father, Ahmed, a carpenter who lost his workshop to the war, offers to build goalposts from scrap wood. A widow, Noor, begins sewing jerseys from old fabric. What began as Yusuf's small act becomes a community effort, a reminder that service can spark connection where isolation reigns. Back in Clara's town, a similar spirit of service is taking hold. The community meetings she started have evolved into action. A group of residents, including Luis the immigrant Clara helped, forms a cooperative to reopen a small cannery, providing jobs for locals and newcomers alike. Clara, inspired by her faith, volunteers to train workers in basic health practices, reducing injuries on the job. Her daughter Sophia expands her school project, creating a booklet of the town's stories, that is shared at the cannery's opening. The mural on the factory wall, once a solitary symbol, is now joined by others: children's handprints, fishermen's nets, immigrant motifs, each a testament to shared purpose. Pope Francis's words from Laudato Si ring true here. Everything is interconnected, and human beings are called to work together for the common good. In Daniel's city service takes a different form. His volunteering at the food bank has grown into a passion. He now leads a team that delivers meals to shut-ins, many elderly or disabled. One woman, Mrs. Chen, a widow with no family nearby, becomes a regular stop. Her stories of immigrating decades ago, of building a life through hardship, challenge Daniel's assumptions about success. He begins to see his legal work differently, taking on more pro bono cases for tenants facing eviction. His relationship with Sarah deepens as they volunteer together their shared purpose, a balm for past wounds. Ethan, their son, joins them occasionally, his usual reticence giving way to curiosity about the lives they touch. Christ's call to serve, as Pope Francis notes in Gaudete et Exsultate, makes us more human, more alive, and Daniel's family is proof of this transformation. Amira's village, too, sees service as a bridge across divides. The women's prayer group, now a small but steady force, expands its efforts, creating a makeshift clinic in the church ruins. Amira, with her teaching background, trains volunteers to provide basic care, bandaging wounds, distributing vitamins, teaching hygiene. Tariq, the soldier who shared her bread, risks his position to smuggle supplies, his loyalty shifting from the war's dogma to the people he serves. One night, when a bombing raid forces families to flee, Amira and Tariq work side by side, guiding children to safety. Their partnership, once unthinkable, embodies Pope Francis's vision. In Fratelli Tutti service is a pillar of the culture of encounter, breaking down barriers of hatred. The clinic, though fragile, becomes a beacon drawing in others who want to help even across enemy lines. Service, however, is not without cost. Yusuf faces skepticism in the camp. Some call him a dreamer. Others resent his efforts, fearing they draw attention from aid agencies that could bring trouble. Exhaustion gnaws at him, and memories of his sister's laughter haunt his dreams. He turns to prayer, not the formal recitations of his youth, but a raw dialogue with God. Why is this so hard? Give me strength. This echoes Christ's own struggle in Gethsemane, Matthew 26:39, where he prayed for the cup of suffering to pass, but accepted God's will. Pope Francis, in his 2022 Lenten message, reminds us, service is a path of self-emptying, of giving, without expecting return. Yusuf finds solace in this, realizing that his pain offered for others becomes a source of purpose. Clara, too, grapples with the demands of service. The cannery project strains her time, and Javier, though supportive, worries about her health. One evening, after a long shift, she collapses into a chair, doubting her impact. She opens her journal, where she practices the exam and reflects on a moment of grace. Sophia's laughter as she handed out booklets at the cannery. Clara writes, "God, I'm tired, but I saw you in her smile." This practice, rooted in Ignatian spirituality and endorsed by Pope Francis, helps her see service not as a burden, but as a gift, connecting her to something greater. Daniel's service also brings challenges. A pro bono case goes poorly, leaving a family evicted despite his efforts. He questions his abilities, his faith wavering. Sarah, sensing his struggle, suggests they attend a retreat at their church, where a priest shares Christ's words. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. Mark 10:45. The retreat focused on service as a path to joy rekindles Daniel's resolve. He realizes that success is not in winning every case, but in showing up in being Christ's hands and feet. This shift, inspired by Pope Francis's call to go to the peripheries, transforms his approach, making each act of service a prayer. In Amira's village, the clinic's success draws threats. Militia leaders wary of unity across factions pressure the community to disband it. Amira Tariq and the women face a choice: retreat or persist. They choose to continue, inspired by Christ's courage before the cross and Pope Francis's words in his 2021 Iraq visit. Love is our strength, the source of our ability to go forward. One night, as they distribute food under a starlit sky, a rival militia arrives not to attack, but to join. A commander, moved by his daughter's healing at the clinic, offers protection. This turning point, fragile but real, shows that service can soften even the hardest hearts. Service also heals the server. Yusuf, through his work with the children, begins to find peace. One boy, Omar, who lost his parents, clings to Yusuf like a brother. Teaching Omar to read, Yusuf feels his sister's presence, as if her love lives on through his actions. Clara, too, finds healing in her town's renewal. The cannery's first shipment, marked with Sophia's booklet, brings pride to her family, easing Javier's shame. Daniel's meal deliveries, especially to Mrs. Chen, fill the emptiness that once defined him. Amira, risking her life for the clinic, discovers a strength she never knew: her grief for her brother channeled into love for her people. These stories, Yusuf's soccer games, Clara's cannery, Daniel's deliveries, Amira's clinic, are not isolated. They are part of a global tapestry woven by Christ's call to serve and Pope Francis's vision of a world where no one is left behind. Practical steps make this vision real. Start small, like Yusuf's games or Clara's meetings. Pray through struggle, like Daniel's retreat or Amira's resolve. Seek community, like the camp's goalposts or the town's murals. Service is not about perfection, but persistence, about giving what we have, however small. The camp, the town, the city, the village, all are battlegrounds where hope fights to prevail. Yusuf, teaching under his lantern, sees the children's eyes shine with dreams. Clara, walking past the cannery, hears laughter from workers who were once strangers. Daniel, delivering meals, feels Sarah's hand in his, their bond stronger than ever. Amira, bandaging a child's wound, meets Tariq's gaze, their shared mission a silent vow. These moments, born of service, are the kingdom of God breaking through as Christ promised. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I. Matthew 18:20. The world remains broken. War rages, poverty persists. Hearts ache, but service is a hammer chipping away at despair. Pope Francis, in his 2023 World Youth Day message, said, "Rise up, go out, serve with love, and you will see the dawn." Yusuf, Clara, Daniel, Amira. They are rising their actions, a chorus of hope. Their stories call us to join them, to serve where we stand, to love through pain, to build where others destroy. As the desert stars burn above Yusuf's camp, They mirror the lights of Amira's village, Daniel's city, Clara's town, a constellation of service guiding us toward a world where hate gives way to hope and every act of love becomes a step toward home. The constellation of hope shining through Yusuf's desert camp, Clara's coastal town, Daniel's bustling city, and Amira's war-torn village now casts its light on a quiet suburb where the battles are less visible but no less real. Here, in a neighborhood of neat lawns and flickering porch lights, a woman named Lena sits at her kitchen table, her laptop open to a news site. Headlines scream of global unrest, refugee crises, economic strife, the wars that displaced Yusuf and Amira. While closer to home, her community grapples with its own fractures, polarized politics, rising mental health struggles, and a growing sense of apathy. Lena, a social worker and mother of two, feels the weight of it all. Her days are spent counseling teens at a local youth center, her nights wrestling with her own doubts about making a difference. Yet as she sips her tea, a memory surfaces, a verse from Christ's Sermon on the Mount. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. It's a call to shine, to radiate hope, even when darkness feels overwhelming. This call to be light, central to Christ's teachings, is amplified by Pope Francis's vision of a world transformed by joy and witness. In his apostolic exhortation, Christus Vivit, he writes, "Be a light for those in darkness, not by words alone, but by living with love and courage." In a time when despair, whether from global conflicts or personal struggles, threatens to dim our spirits, this teaching is a rallying cry. Lena's suburb, like Yusuf's camp or Clara's town, is a microcosm of the world's pain teens, battling anxiety families divided by ideology, neighbors estranged by mistrust. But it's also a place where light can break through, where small acts of witness can ignite change. For Lena, the challenge is to embody this light, to live her faith so boldly that it inspires others to do the same. Lena's life is a balancing act. Her job at the youth center demands emotional energy as she guides teens like Maya, a 16-year-old struggling with depression, or Jamal, a 14-year-old caught in a cycle of anger after his parents' divorce. At home, her own children, Liam, 10, and Emma, 8, clamor for attention, while her husband Mark, a teacher, navigates his own stress from overcrowded classrooms. The news, Lena reads stories of war, division, and suffering, feels like a mirror of her community's quieter battles. She recalls a homily quoting Pope Francis. A Christian is never bored or sad. Rather, the one who loves Christ is full of joy and radiates joy. Lena wonders how to radiate joy when exhaustion and doubt creep in. But the memory of Christ's words, "You are the light," stirs her to act. Her first step is to live her faith visibly at home. Inspired by the Holy Family's example of trust, as described in Pope Francis's Amoris, Laetitia Lena starts a new tradition, a weekly gratitude night. After dinner, the family shares one thing they're thankful for and one way they saw God that week. At first, Liam rolls his eyes and Emma giggles, but Mark joins in sharing how a student's breakthrough in class lifted his spirits. Lena talks about Maya's small smile during a counseling session. Slowly, the practice shifts their perspective, turning their focus from stress to grace. It's a simple act, but it lights up their homemaking faith, a lived reality, not just a Sunday ritual. This light extends to Lena's work. At the youth center, she sees teens like Maya and Jamal grappling with a world that feels chaotic. Christ's parable of the lamp. Luke 8:16, where light is placed on a stand not hidden, inspires her to create a space where teens can shine. She starts a peer mentorship program pairing older teens with younger ones to share skills and stories. Maya, who loves art, teaches Emma to sketch her own mood lifting as she helps. Jamal, a talented basketball player, coaches Liam's team, finding purpose in leadership. The program, small at first, grows as teens invite friends, their confidence, a beacon in a community where youth often feel unseen. Pope Francis's words in Gaudete et Exsultate resonate. Your mission is to bring light to the world not by being perfect, but by being faithful. In Yusuf's camp, the light of witness burns brightly. His soccer games have evolved into a league with teams from different camp sections competing. The children's laughter draws aid workers who donate equipment, and even skeptical elders join as referees. Yusuf, once haunted by loss, now sees his sister's spirit in the kids he coaches. One evening, he shares his story with the team, admitting his grief and how their joy keeps him going. The children, moved, dedicate a game to Yusuf's sister, their cheers a prayer under the desert stars. This vulnerability, inspired by Christ's openness on the cross, echoes Pope Francis's call in Fratelli Tutti to build a culture of encounter through authentic sharing. Yusuf's witness transforms the camp, proving that light shines brightest when we dare to be real. Clara's town continues to glow with collective effort. The cannery cooperative, now thriving, inspires other businesses, a bakery, a repair shop, each employing locals and immigrants like Luis. Clara's health training program expands, and Sophia's booklet becomes a town treasure, read at community events. One night, the town holds a festival by the pier where the mural of clasped hands is lit by lanterns. Residents share stories of struggle and hope, their voices a chorus of light. Clara, reflecting on Christ's words, "Let your light shine before others." Matthew 5:16 sees the festival as a testament to faith in action. Pope Francis's vision in Laudato Si, a world where all work for the common good lives here as strangers become neighbors under a shared sky. Daniel's city pulses with its own light. His meal deliveries have grown into a network with volunteers from his church and Ethan's school joining in. Mrs. Chen, the widow he visits, starts a knitting group, her creations warming the homeless. Daniel's pro bono work gains traction, saving several families from eviction. Sarah and Ethan, inspired by his passion, organize a fundraiser for the food bank, their family united in purpose. At a church event, Daniel shares how volunteering changed him, quoting Pope Francis, "Joy is contagious. It spreads when we live for others." His story, raw and honest, inspires others to serve, proving that one person's light can spark a fire. Christ's promise. I am the light of the world. John 8:12 shines through Daniel, guiding his city toward hope. In Amira's village, the clinic stands as a lighthouse amid war's darkness. Despite threats, it grows with volunteers from rival factions working together. Tariq, now openly defying his commander's coordinates supply, runs his courage a witness to love's power. Amira, teaching children in the clinic's shade, shares stories of her brother's drawings, her grief woven into lessons of hope. One day, a ceasefire allows families to reunite, and the clinic hosts a gathering where enemies embrace their tears, a shared light. Pope Francis's words from his 2021 Iraq visit resonate. Love is our strength, shining through the darkness of hatred. Amira's witness, like Yusuf's, Clara's, and Daniel's, shows that faith lived boldly can heal even the deepest wounds. Lena's suburb, though, faces its own trials. The youth center's funding is cut, threatening the mentorship program. Community tensions flare as elections near, with neighbors arguing over signs on lawns. Lena feels the darkness creeping and her own hope flickering. She turns to prayer, using the examen as Clara does, reflecting on moments of light. Maya's sketches, Jamal's coaching, her family's gratitude nights. She recalls Christ's words to Peter, "Do not fear, from now on, you will be fishers of men." Luke 5:10. Inspired, she rallies the teens to save the program, organizing a talent show to raise funds. Maya paints backdrops. Jamal MCs, and Liam and Emma perform a skit. The event, held in the school gym, draws a crowd, parents, neighbors, even skeptics. The teens' energy, their light, rekindles the community's spirit, proving that faith can overcome fear. Witness, however, requires resilience. Yusuf faces danger as camp authorities question his league, fearing it unites rival groups. He prays, echoing Christ's Gethsemane plea, Matthew 26:39, and persists his games a defiant light. Clara's town sees pushback from developers eyeing the cannery's land, but her community's unity, forged in faith, holds firm. Daniel's pro bono work draws criticism from colleagues, yet he continues his light undimmed. Amira and Tariq risk their lives daily, but their clinic's impact, a child saved, a family reunited, fuels their resolve. Pope Francis, in his 2023 Pentecost homily, reminds us, "The Spirit gives us courage to shine, even when the world prefers darkness." These witnesses, though tested, embody this courage, their lives a testament to Christ's enduring light. Lena's talent show becomes a turning point. The funds save the mentorship program, and the event sparks dialogue among neighbors, softening political divides. Maya, once withdrawn, displays her art at the library, her confidence a beacon. Jamal mentors younger teens, his anger replaced by purpose. Lena's family, inspired, joins a parish group to support refugees, connecting their suburb to Yusuf's camp and Amira's village. They learn of a global network, churches, NGOs, volunteers, linking their efforts to Clara's cooperative and Daniel's deliveries. This network, rooted in Christ's command to make disciples of all nations, Matthew 28:19, shows that light, when shared, multiplies, binding the world in hope. The cost of witness is real. Lena lies awake some nights worried about her teens, her family, the world. Yusuf buries a child lost to disease, his heart breaking yet resolute. Clara faces exhaustion. Daniel self-doubt, Amira and Tariq constant danger, yet each finds strength in Christ's promise. "I have overcome the world," John 16:33. Pope Francis's call in Evangelii Gaudium to go forth with joy sustains them, their witness, a fire that warms others. Practical steps make this possible, live faith visibly, like Lena's gratitude nights. Create spaces for others to shine, like Yusuf's league or Maya's art. Persist through doubt, like Daniel's service or Amira's clinic. These acts, small but intentional, are the light Christ calls us to be. As Lena closes her laptop, the headlines fade, replaced by a vision of her teens laughing at the talent show. Yusuf, under his desert stars, sees Omar score a goal, his smile a spark. Clara, by her pier, watches lanterns glow at the festival. Daniel, delivering meals, feels Mrs. Chen's gratitude. Amira, in her clinic, holds a child's hand as Tariq guards the door. Their lights distinct, yet united, form a city on a hill, shining for a world in need. Pope Francis's words from Christus Vivit echo, "You are the now of God called to live with passion and share his light." The world remains scarred. War rages, hearts ache, divisions persist, but light prevails. Christ's call, amplified by Pope Francis's vision, is our guide. Be the light, love, boldly act with joy. Lena, Yusuf. Clara, Daniel, Amira. They show us how their stories, a map for our own. As their lights merge, they invite us to add ours to shine where we stand, to build a kingdom where hope outshines hate. The dawn is near, and we are called to rise to carry the light, to walk together toward a world made whole by love.